Alexander marched with the sun in his eyes and stitched the known world into a single dream. Caesar bent a republic until it crowned him with laurel. Hannibal carved his name across the Alps with elephants and audacity. These were not mere kings. They were visionaries, restless minds that saw beyond borders, beyond their age, beyond the limits of what men believed possible. And in that rare company stands our protagonist. His name? Mehmed. To the world, he will be known as the Conqueror. But nothing about his destiny was inevitable. The boy we meet at the dawn of the 15th century was no marble demigod. He was flesh, fallible, impatient, curious. And yet, from the bruised heart of Anatolia, that boy would rise to tear down walls 1,000 years old, strangle an empire in its cradle, and birth another destined to bestride continents. The city that drew him like a lodestar, Constantinople, the queen of cities. For 1,000 years it had laughed in the face of armies, storms, and time itself. To a boy barely tall enough to mount a horse, that glittering prize became an obsession, a promise he would risk everything to claim. To understand Mehmed is to understand a paradox. A man who devoured Aristotle as eagerly as he drank from the wisdom of the Quran. A sovereign who studied Euclid and Ptolemy, yet sought guidance from mystics steeped in Sufi lore. A warrior who sharpened scimitars and verses alike. A ruler whose faith was as unshakable as his ambition. So, gather close. This is no tale of mere conquest. It is the story of a mind, a will, and a city that learned what happens when destiny does not knock, but kicks down the door. The year 1432. The place, Edirne, a handsome city of domes and minarets, then the Ottoman capital. Inside the palace, a cry splits the air. A boy is born, Mehmed, son of Sultan Murad II, and Huma Hatun, a woman whose origins remain as misty as the Bosphorus at dawn. Slave? Princess? History shrugs. All we know is this: from that union would spring a force history would tremble to name. The empire into which Mehmed arrived was an adolescent thing, awkward, ambitious, hungry. It straddled two worlds, the Islamic East and the Christian West. And like all teenagers, it longed for respectability. Respectability in this age meant one thing: Constantinople. For 1,000 years, that city had loomed like a dare, a jewel dropped between Europe and Asia, its walls mocking every would-be conqueror. Persians tried, Arabs tried, even crusaders came close, but never to keep. The city stood, a marble thumb in the eye of Islam. Little Mehmed grew up hearing its name whispered like a prayer. And one day, that whisper became a command. A hadith of the Prophet promised paradise to the one who seized it. Blessed is the commander who conquers Constantinople. To a boy with an imagination hotter than the Anatolian sun, what greater bait could there be? His tutors fed that hunger. Molla Gurani taught him the stern certainties of Islamic law. Aksham-Suddin, the mystic, kindled in him a vision he would one day drench in blood and glory. At 11, Mehmed was packed off to Amasya, a provincial capital crouched among mountains, where princes were sent to ripen like pomegranates on the tree of responsibility. Here, under the cold gaze of stern tutors, he devoured knowledge as other boys devoured figs. Arabic, Persian, Turkish, these were his cradle songs. But Greek and Latin soon joined the chorus. Homer, Herodotus, Ptolemy, the ghosts of antiquity sat at his elbow. Mathematics, fortification, siegecraft. He inhaled it all with a hunger that startled his elders. And yet, for all his bookish brilliance, the boy had steel in his marrow. He rode like a Tatar, shot like an archer born, and dreamed not of gardens, but of guns. While his playmates counted sheep, Mehmed counted walls, those of Constantinople, and pondered how to smash them. 1444, a year of shadows and whispers. Across Europe, bells peal in triumph. A crusade is coming. For Christendom has scented weakness in the east, and weakness has a name, Mehmed. 12 years old, scarcely sprouted a beard, and suddenly Sultan of the Ottomans. Why? Because for the first and only time in more than 6 centuries of Ottoman history, a sultan abdicates, not under duress, not by conspiracy, but by his own will. Murad II, still in the full height of his power, lays down his sword and throne for prayer beads. Why? Because the boy was no ordinary prince. Mehmed was bright, disciplined, and astonishingly mature, a mind that promised greatness. Yet the decision stunned the empire. In the gilded halls of Edirne, viziers whispered, "Can a child guard a realm ringed by wolves?" For Murad, the answer was yes. For the boy, it was a trial by fire. And so, onto the trembling throne steps, a boy barely taller than his own sword. But do not picture a timid child. Even at 12, Mehmed acted with steel in his spine. He presided over councils, issued decrees, and planned reforms with a clarity that startled even seasoned statesmen. For a moment, just a moment, it seemed his father's gamble might hold. What followed was chaos dressed as opportunity. In the palaces of Buda, in the halls of Rome, men licked their lips. The Turks were leaderless, they crowed. The boy sultan would topple like a sapling in a storm. Under the banner of the cross, they marched, Hungarians, Poles, Wallachians, an army glittering with steel, their crusade sanctioned by a pope who smelled blood. Their target, the fragile empire of a child. Picture it, Edirne, capital of the Ottomans. Mehmed pacing marble floors, heart thudding like a war drum. Beyond the palace walls, his world is aflame. And so, he sends a message, not a plea, but a command. If you are Sultan, then come and lead your armies. If I am Sultan, then I order you, come at once. Murad returns. At Varna, the old wolf bares his teeth. The battle that follows will be sung by bards and cursed by widows. The crusader host shattered, their hopes drowned in a sea of blood and steel. And Mehmed, sent back to the quiet of Manisa. His brief grasp of power pried away, his pride bruised, but not broken. Do not mistake this for defeat. In his retreat, the boy becomes a man, and his dreams swell to fill the sky. For Mehmed is learning a truth older than Rome, that thrones are not given, they are taken. And when next he sits upon that throne, nothing will pry him from it. 1451. Murad is dead. The empire quivers like a bowstring. Onto the throne strides Mehmed, not the callow boy of yesterday, but a youth of iron will, his eyes dark with purpose. He is 19 and his ambition is a living thing, coiled and hungry. From the moment he clasps the reins of power, his gaze swings inexorably to one point on the map, a glittering thorn that has pricked the pride of Islam for 1,000 years, Constantinople. To understand his obsession, you must see it as he saw it. The city crouches astride the Bosphorus, its walls triple banded in stone, girdled by moats, bristling with towers. For centuries, armies have dashed themselves against its flanks like waves against a cliff. Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, all broken, all swept away. Even in its twilight, Byzantium is a lion, toothless perhaps, but still dangerous. And yet Mehmed whispers a vow, I will have it, or the grave will have me. First he sharpens his claws. On the European shore of the Bosphorus, stone by stone, rises Rumeli Hisara, the fortress of the Roman land, its fangs bared at the sea. Ships passing through now bow to Ottoman cannon or perish. A Venetian captain dares defiance. His galley becomes driftwood, his crew headless corpses bobbing like apples in the tide. Let Christendom take note. The boy has teeth. Then comes the great gamble, the cannon. No toy this, a beast born of fire and iron, cast by the Hungarian master Orban. Its maw could swallow an ox. Its roar shakes mountains. Mehmed caresses it like a lover. With such a monster, he muses, walls become sand. By spring the storm is ready. 100,000 men, some whisper 200. Janissaries whose discipline would shame Sparta. Cavalry swift as falcons. Sappers, miners, archers, a tide of flesh and steel. Behind them, the throb of drums, the chant of imams promising paradise for those who fall. And at their head rides Mehmed, 21, his eyes fever bright, his heart ablaze. April 6th, 1453. The earth trembles as the siege begins. Week upon week, the guns thunder. The Theodosian walls, those ancient sentinels, shudder, crack, yet stand. Inside, Emperor Constantine XI clings to hope, his ragged army dwarfed by the Ottoman sea. Then, on a moonless night in late April, Mehmed plays his masterstroke. Over greased timbers, under straining ropes, his ships crawl like steel serpents overland, around Galata, into the Golden Horn. In one night, the unthinkable becomes flesh. The Christian fleet is trapped, the noose drawn tight. May dawn's blood red. For 53 days, the city bleeds. Its people pray, starve, die. And then, the end, May 29th. At the first blush of dawn, the Ottoman guns cough smoke, the horns blare, and the human tide surges. Janissaries swarm like locusts. Ladders splinter, men scream, steel bites flesh. Through smoke and slaughter, the crescent rises. The last emperor dies as emperors should, sword in hand, swallowed by legend. And Mehmed? He rides through shattered gates, no longer a prince with a dream, but a Caesar with a crown. Amid the smoking ruins of the Bucolian palace, he pauses. The marble halls echo with ghosts, and softly, almost tenderly, he murmurs the Persian poet Saadi. The spider weaves curtains in the halls of kings. The owl hoots from the towers of Afrasiab. All glory, all power, ashes in the wind. But for now, the wind is his. Part 4. The New Rome. And so the city falls, 1,000 years of Byzantine glory snuffed out like a candle in the wind. On that day in May, the world tilts on its axis. For when Mehmed rides through the shattered gates, history ceases to be what it was, and becomes what he wills it to be. But conquest for Mehmed is not the end, it is the prologue. Constantinople, bloodied, smouldering, ghost-haunted, is a prize too precious to leave in ruin. Where others see ashes, he sees marble. Where others smell death, he scents eternity. And so, he sets about his second conquest, not of walls, but of time. The city must live, and live Ottoman. He summons architects, masons, scholars, merchants. Hagia Sophia, the shrine of emperors, he consecrates as a mosque, yet spares its glittering mosaics, as though reluctant to erase beauty, even when it speaks in another tongue. Around it, he raises a forest of minarets, a chorus of domes. The Fatih Mosque, serene and imperious, its shadow stretching like a blessing over the reborn city. But he does not stop with stone. To fill his city, he turns deportation into art. From Anatolia, from the Balkans, from far Armenia, come caravans of souls, Muslims, Christians, Jews, all flung together like jewels in a sultan's turban. Greeks return to their old quarters. Armenians cluster near Sarmatia. Jews take root by the Golden Horn. By imperial decree, a city rises from its grave. A city of tongues, creeds and colours, humming like a hive under the Ottoman sun. And Mehmed. He crowns himself with a title to make Caesars twitch in their tombs. Kaiser Irum, Caesar of Rome. Let popes froth in their silks. Let princes snarl from their thrones. The Orthodox Patriarch, newly anointed by Mehmed's own hand, nods in solemn assent. In the marble heart of Hagia Sophia, under lamps perfumed with musk, an ancient empire bends its knee to a boy who dreamed too loudly and made the world listen. By 1478, the numbers tell the tale. Where weeds once clawed at shattered stones, 16,000 households now smoke with hearth fires. 80,000 souls chatter in bazaars, fragrant with saffron and sweat. Ships jostle in the Golden Horn, their sails fat with trade winds. Mehmed has not merely taken a city, he has forged a capital, the diamond in the diadem of empire. Part 5. The Restless Sword. Yet for all his marble and minarets, Mehmed is no gardener content to prune roses. His is a hunger without shore. The ink on Constantinople's epitaph is scarcely dry before his thoughts leap west, east, north, everywhere but still. For the world, to Mehmed, is a chessboard, and he intends to checkmate kings. First, the Balkans. Serbia, that battered buffer, falls beneath his heel. Bosnia follows, its mountains echoing with the wail of church bells strangled into silence. In Trebizond, the last flicker of Byzantine pride, he snuffs the flame with a mailed fist. The Black Sea becomes an Ottoman lake, its waves lapping obediently at his shores. But Europe will not go gentle into that good night. From the misty Carpathians rides a figure clawed from nightmares. Vlad the Impaler, Dracula, son of the dragon. A man whose soul seems pickled in venom, who dines amid forests of his own making. Forests of men skewered on stakes, their bodies writhing like ghastly fruit in a crimson orchard. Even Mehmed, who has stared into more than one abyss, recoils at the sight. And here, history twists the knife. For this fiend of Wallachia was once no stranger to Mehmed's halls. As a boy, Vlad shared bread and lessons in the Ottoman court. A hostage, he learned Turkish, he learned the bow, and he learned to loathe. His younger brother Radu bent with the wind. Handsome, soft-spoken, Radu embraced Islam, charmed Mehmed, and rose in Ottoman favour. Where Vlad bristled, Radu bowed. And so bloodlines fork. One brother becomes Mehmed's cherished ally, Radu the Fair, while the other sharpens his soul into a spike. When Mehmed advances into Wallachia, it is a duel of old ghosts. Vlad greets him not with battle lines, but with scorched earth and psychological theatre. Villages vanish in smoke, rivers clog with corpses, and then, like the devil's own gallery, Mehmed finds the Forest of the Impaled, 20,000 men, women and children writhing on stakes, their lifeless eyes glassy under the sun. The Sultan, iron-willed though he is, turns pale. Yet onward he marches, through blood and horror, until Wallachia lies gasping beneath the crescent. And when the dust settles, it is Radu, Mehmed's boyhood companion, whom he installs as voivode, a pliant reed in the wind where Vlad had been a storm. But Vlad was not the only ghost from Mehmed's youth to haunt his reign. In the dim corridors of the Ottoman court, as tutors bent his mind into steel, one name fluttered like a black banner in the wind: Gheorghe Castrioti, Skanderbeg. The tale was a dagger whispered at night, a Christian prince taken as a child, raised under Ottoman eyes, honed into a weapon of Islam, and then, in a stroke of audacity, turning the blade against its forge. Skanderbeg did not just escape. He mocked the empire, carved his defiance into Albania's granite spine, and held the passes of his homeland against sultans for decades. By the time Mehmed dons the diadem of conquest, Skanderbeg is no phantom of history, but a living storm. Old enough to be Mehmed's father, yet still astride his warhorse, the Albanian eagle tears Ottoman armies like cloth. Fortress after fortress shudders at his name. Banners blacken in smoke where his sword arcs. For Mehmed, whose ambition stretches from Rome to Persia, Skanderbeg is not a mere rebel. He is a legend that refuses to die. To the east, another foe rears like a storm cloud, Uzun Hasan of the White Sheep Turkomans, lord of Persia's wild marches. They clash at Otlukbeli in 1473, a battle of thunder, iron and bone. When the dust settles, the white sheep are but a red mist on the wind, and Mehmed rides triumphant, his standard snapping like flame against a bruised sky. Then, northward, beyond the snows, Mehmed casts his gaze to the frozen steppes of the Black Sea. There, the Crimean Khanate, Kurum, glitters like a jewel in the storm. Genoese merchants still cling to its harbours, dreaming Venetian dreams. Mehmed shatters them. In 1475, Ottoman banners crack in the Crimean wind. Kaffa, the great Genoese fortress, falls with a groan of iron gates. The Giray dynasty bends the knee, its khans now vassals to the Sultan. With this, Mehmed does not merely win a province, he seizes the northern sword hand of empire. The Kanunî becomes his dagger, pointed at Muscovy's throat, and the Black Sea, once a highway of rivals, now lies captive, a dark mirror for the Ottoman moon. Beyond the Aegean, Venice glitters, a siren draped in silks, her coffers swollen with gold. Mehmed hurls his galleys against her, clawing at her island jewels. Negroponte falls, the wine-dark sea froths with blood. For 20 years, the Lion of St. Mark and the Sultan of Rum trade bites like rabid dogs, until at last Venice, panting and bloody, buys peace with gold and humiliation. Yet Mehmed's gaze has already slid further west, to a land steeped in legend, where Caesars once strode and popes mutter their prayers. Italy. In 1480, his banners darken the skies above Otranto. Southern Italy trembles. Rome itself whispers a question that chills the marrow. Will St. Peter's hear the muezzins call? But history, that trickster, slams the door. For fate is sharpening her sickle, and Mehmed does not know it. Chapter 6. The Sultans Circle. 12 shadows behind the throne. An empire may wear one crown, but it beats with 100 hearts. Mehmed the Conqueror looms in history like a colossus, yet even giants cast shadows. For every wall he shattered, every law he carved, there were minds sharper than steel and wills, as unyielding as stone, bending the world behind him. This is not the tale of one man, but of 12. The circle of power whose whispers, blood and brilliance stitched together the fabric of an empire. Zaganos Pasha. The silent hammer, born a Christian, taken by the Devshirme, Zaganos rose as Mehmed's warhound. When others counselled patience, he roared for blood. It was his voice that demanded Constantinople's siege, and the walls fell on the echo of his conviction. Mahmud Pasha Angelovich, the diplomat with two faces, silver-tongued, honey-souled, yet cold as iron. Mahmud signed treaties with one hand and sharpened swords with the other. To Europe, he was a serpent in silk. To Mehmed, a velvet dagger. Chandler Halil Pasha, the last pillar of a fallen house. Halil was not merely a vizier. He was the last branch of a tree that had rooted itself in Ottoman soil since the age of Orhan. For 5 generations, the Kanunî family was the empire's hidden dynasty. Counselors of kings, makers of viziers, arbiters of war and peace. They built mosques, bankrolled battles, and bent the empire's destiny with a whisper. When Murad II laid down his sword, Halil ruled in all but name. But when Mehmed reached for Constantinople, Halil said no. And for that no, he paid with his head. His death was more than vengeance. It was a revolution. With a single stroke of the blade, Mehmed shattered a century of aristocratic power and crowned himself an absolute monarch. Rum Mehmed Pasha, the engineer of empire. If Mehmed was the dreamer, Rum Mehmed was the mason. His fortresses clamped the Bosphorus like jaws of iron. His bridges spanned rivers like veins of steel. In his stonework, Mehmed's ambitions found flesh. Tursun Beg, the pen behind the sword. Cannons roar, cities burn, but history remembers ink. Tursun Beg chronicled not just conquests but visions, turning Mehmed's campaigns into scripture for the ages. Molla Gurani, the teacher of kings. He carved jurisprudence into the steel of empire. Scholar, jurist, and Mehmed's moral anchor, Molla Gurani forged a boy into a sovereign whose laws would outlast his sword. Akşemseddin, the mystic who found the prophet's bones. The saint at the Sultan's shoulder. When cannons faltered and hopes thinned, Akşemseddin whispered faith into the winds. His discovery of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari's tomb made the conquest divine. Hasan Aga, the lion of the Janissaries. Commander of the empire's iron fist, Hasan Aga ruled the Janissaries, the disciplined storm that tore cities like parchment. Where Mehmed pointed, Hasan's shadow fell. Hamza Bey, the hawk of the Black Sea. His ships throttled Genoese lifelines and turned Venetian dreams to foam. Hamza's galleys were scythes upon the wine-dark waters of empire. Gazi Evrenos, the old wolf of Rumelia. He was conquest in flesh. Scarred and grey, Evrenos had carved Europe with his blade long before Mehmed's birth. Even in twilight, he rode when others prayed for peace. Has Murad Pasha, from purple to crescent. Once heir to the Palaiologos, nephew to the last Byzantine emperor, he dined as a child beneath the domes his uncle died defending. Mehmed remade him into a weapon, Beylerbey of Rumelia, the empire's hammer in the Balkans. Messi Pasha, the admiral of lost Byzantium, blood of Caesars, helm of the crescent. Messi Pasha commanded Ottoman galleys against Venice, painting the Adriatic red. Later, as Grand Vizier, he steered a throne that had crushed his own heritage, a twist even Homer would envy. These were not courtiers, they were engines of empire, 12 shadows cast by a single crown. They schemed, they fought, they built, and they bled to make Mehmed not just a conqueror, but a chapter in eternity. Part 7. The man behind the myth. Let us pause, if only to breathe. For amid this hurricane of steel and conquest stands a figure who defies the lazy caricature of the brute. Mehmed was no dull sword arm swinging in the dark. His mind burned as fiercely as his ambition. He was, in the truest sense, a Renaissance prince, though his Renaissance spoke Turkish and wore a turban. Consider his court. Here, the verses of Persian poets curl like smoke. The strains of Greek philosophy hum beneath the clatter of arms. In his private chambers, scrolls lie splayed like lovers. Aristotle, Ptolemy, Euclid, sharing cushions with the Quran. He debates theology with imams, astronomy with savants, and dallies in the dangerous seductions of Plato. He invites artists from Venice, those wizards of light and pigment, to daub his visage on canvas. Gentile Bellini comes, and from his brush blooms a portrait that still startles the eye. The Sultan, hawk-nosed, brooding, a wreath of melancholy shadowing his brow. Nor did his appetite stop at paint. He gorged on relics as others on roast peacock, shards of the true cross, a feather of the archangel, the arm, yes, the arm of John the Baptist. In a chest bound with silver, these sacred fragments nestled like captive stars, mute witnesses to a mind that straddled the worlds of faith and audacity. Yet for all his lust for beauty, Mehmed's mercy was a blade with two edges. He could, in the same breath, grant Christians their patriarch and sign a law that turned fratricide into policy. To preserve order, his edict murmured, a prince may slay his brothers. And slay they did. In the shadowed nurseries of the palace, infant wails were stilled with silken cords, for in Mehmed's calculus, the death of one was the life of empire. He was then a paradox, scholar and scourge, a man who read Homer by lamplight, and then rode at dawn to drench his sword in blood. But such are the titans who stride across the stage of history, stitched from contradictions, crowned with shadows. Epilogue. The great eagle falls. And so the curtain trembles. The year is 1481. Mehmed, now in his prime, girds for yet another campaign. Rhodes, perhaps, or the green valleys of Italy. Some whisper Egypt, cradle of caliphs, beckons his ambition. We shall never know. For as the army snakes across the hills near Gebze, the hand that throttled empires falters. Fever grips him, or poison, some dare to murmur, dripped like nightshade into his chalice by a son eager for the throne. On the 3rd day of May, the great eagle plummets from the sky. Word flits across Europe like a sparrow on fire. In Venice, bells gibber with joy. In Rome, cardinals sigh relief. And in the streets of Christendom, a cry goes up that has not been heard for 3 decades. The Turk is dead. Yet in Istanbul, under the swelling domes he raised, the air hangs heavy with silence. They lay him in the Fatih Mosque, his name carved in stone, his shadow etched across centuries. What then do we make of him? This boy who dreamed of cities and woke to find the world in his fist. He took Constantinople, and with it the keys of empire. He shattered the spine of Byzantium, bridled the Black Sea, and made the Mediterranean quail. He bent faith to his purpose, art to his vanity, death to his convenience. And when at last he strode into the marble halls of Hagia Sophia, he did not merely claim a city, he crowned himself master of an age. And so his epitaph is written not in stone, but in the trembling of maps, the toppled walls of kingdoms, the whisper of muezzins echoing through domes where once choirs soared. He was Mehmed, the Conqueror, and the world, ours, yours, still throbs with the echo of his tread.